All right, welcome to our briefing on the geography of Europe. Over the next few minutes, we are going to build a really powerful mental map of the entire continent. We'll pack it with all the key connections and insights that are going to give you a serious edge. So, here's our game plan. We've split this into 5 key parts. First, we'll set the stage, looking at the mountains and seas that literally shape Europe. Then, we'll follow the rivers, Europe's arteries, that have dictated trade and culture for centuries. After that, we'll connect the dots between the land, the climate, and what people can grow. Then we'll dig into the resources that power Europe's industries. And we'll wrap it all up by zooming in on the key economic and regional hubs that define modern Europe.
Okay, let's dive right in. We're starting with the absolute basics, Europe's physical stage. Understanding the mountains and the seas is so important because they're the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about, from where borders were drawn to ancient trade routes to today's weather patterns.
So think of Europe's mountain ranges as its backbone. The big takeaway here is this kind of east-west divide. You've got the Carpathians and Caucasus in the east, the Pyrenees and the famous Alps in the west. They all create these natural barriers. And hey, check out the Kyolan Mountains up in Norway. They're actually an ancient range, a lot like the Aravallis back in India, which means they've been worn down by millions of years of erosion. Pretty cool, right? Now, to really make the seas stick in your mind, let's go on a quick virtual cruise. Imagine we're starting at the Strait of Gibraltar, that famous gateway into the Mediterranean. First, we sail into the Ligurian Sea, right off the coast of Italy. Then we pass between Sardinia and the Italian mainland, and boom, we're in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Heading east, we cruise into the Ionian Sea. And if we take a little detour north, we're in the Adriatic, squeezed right between Italy and the Balkans. Our trip ends in the absolutely beautiful Aegean Sea, which is filled with all those islands between Greece and Turkey. So if the mountains are Europe's backbone, then its rivers, well, they're the arteries. For centuries, these have been the continent's lifeblood, connecting people, moving goods, and really fueling entire economies. So let's trace their paths. The first big group of rivers flows west, out into the Atlantic. Over on the Iberian Peninsula, you've got the Douro and the Tagus, famous for their wine regions. In France, the iconic Seine winds right through Paris and into the English Channel. A bit further north, you have Germany's industrial lifelines, the Rhine and the Elbe, which empty into the North Sea. And over in Poland, the Oder and the Vistula flow into the Baltic, rivers that have marked historic borders for hundreds of years. Now, there's a smaller, but just as critical group of rivers that empties into the warm Mediterranean. We're talking about Spain's Ebro, France's Rhone, and Italy's Po. These rivers are absolutely vital for the agriculture in this sun-drenched part of the world, especially for viticulture. Yep, that's growing grapes for all that amazing wine.
Now, heading east, here's a super handy pattern that's great for remembering this stuff. The major rivers over here all start with the letter D, and they all flow into the Black Sea. You've got the Danube, the Dnieper, the Dnieper, and the Don. It's just a simple trick, but it really helps lock in the key waterways of Eastern Europe. Let's just zoom in for a second on 2 of Europe's most important rivers, the Rhine and the Danube. The Rhine is all about business. It's an economic engine, a heavily engineered waterway that connects Germany's industrial heartland to Rotterdam, one of the busiest ports on the planet. The Danube, on the other hand, is a totally different story. It's a complex geopolitical artery. I mean, it flows through 10 different countries and their capitals. It's a symbol of European unity, for sure, but also of the huge challenges that come with sharing a resource like that. Okay, so now let's see how all this physical geography, the mountains, the rivers, actually influences what you can grow. This is where we connect the dots between the landscape, the climate, and the food on the table, from French wine to Dutch cheese. You can see the link between climate and agriculture so clearly here. The warm, dry summers of the Mediterranean, down in Spain and Italy, perfect for olives and citrus. France, with its mix of climates, is a powerhouse for wine and cheese. Then you go north to the cooler climates of Germany and Poland, and it's ideal for grains and root veggies. And of course, you have Ukraine, sitting on those vast, fertile grasslands called the steppe, making it a global breadbasket for wheat and sunflower. Now for a fascinating little case study in economic policy. Back in the 70s and 80s, Europe had a huge problem, way too much dairy. People were literally talking about milk lakes and butter mountains. So to stop prices from completely crashing and to protect farmers, the EU brought in the milk quota in 1984. It basically put a hard cap on how much milk each country could produce. So this whole policy started because they needed to control a massive surplus. And for over 30 years, it did stabilize the market. But then, fast forward to 2015, and the world looks totally different. Suddenly, the goal wasn't about controlling what was happening inside Europe, but about capturing this booming global demand for dairy in places like China and India. And just like that, the quota was gone. And this right here gets to the heart of the conflict. For the big dairies and exporters, getting rid of the quota was a golden ticket. It meant they could expand and go after these huge new global markets. But for the small family farms, it was a massive blow. They lost those guaranteed higher prices, and now they have to try and compete with giant industrial operations, a battle that, frankly, many of them are struggling to win. Okay, now let's dig a little deeper. Literally, we're going to look beneath the surface at the mineral resources and the industrial belts that have been powering Europe's economy for centuries. You can't talk about European industry without talking about the Rhine-Ruhr region. This is the industrial heartland, the engine room. It's this massive, continuous belt of coal that stretches across parts of Germany, like the Ruhr and Saar regions, and even into the Lorraine region of France. This incredible concentration of coal is what fueled the Industrial Revolution and built the modern European economy as we know it. So you hear the term Brent crude on the news all the time when they talk about oil prices, right? Well, it's a global benchmark, and it comes from the North Sea. What makes it so valuable is that it's sweet, which means it's low in sulfur, and light, meaning it has a low density. That combination makes it way easier and cheaper to refine into things we all use, like gasoline and diesel. That's why its price is watched so closely all around the world. The journey of a diamond is a truly global one, and this breaks it down perfectly. It often starts in a mine in Africa. But then comes a critical step. Over 80% of all the world's rough diamonds pass through Antwerp in Belgium, which is the global trading hub. From there, the vast majority are sent to Surat in India, the world's center for cutting and polishing, before they finally make it to a jewelry store near you. All right, for our final piece of the puzzle, let's zoom in on how European nations group themselves together and where the continent's major economic action is concentrated. Understanding these hubs is really the key to seeing the modern European landscape. Okay, here's a point of confusion that trips a lot of people up, so let's get it straight. The term Scandinavian refers to a cultural and language group. That's Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Nordic, on the other hand, is a much broader geopolitical term. It includes those three, plus Finland and Iceland. It's a really important distinction because the Nordic countries as a whole are famous for their high Human Development Index and their leadership in green technology. Germany really is Europe's industrial engine, and this just shows you the incredible concentration of power. You've got Stuttgart, home of Mercedes-Benz and Porsche. Munich has BMW and the electronics giant Siemens. Frankfurt is the financial heart where the European Central Bank is, and Wolfsburg is a city that was literally built around the Volkswagen factory. What's amazing is that each one of these cities is a global leader in its own field. And of course, this industrial specialization is spread all across the continent. You've got car hubs in Turin, Italy with Fiat, and in Coventry in the UK, home of Jaguar. Lyon in France has a long, rich history in silk and chemicals, while Bilbao in Spain is a center for iron and steel. And over in Poland, the city of Łódź is a major hub for textiles. It really shows you the incredible diversity of Europe's industrial landscape. And that brings us to our final thought, a question that connects European policy directly back to India. With the EU milk quota now gone, these massive European dairy corporations are set to expand aggressively into the global market. So that poses a direct question for us. Can India's cooperative-led dairy model, which supports millions and millions of small farmers, actually compete with these giants on the world stage? It's a huge challenge, and it's one we're going to be facing in the years ahead.